name is Janice. Canaday. How are you all today? I'm going to take you through a tour of the Peyton Randolph house, one of our 88 original buildings here in Colonial, Williamsburg. If at any time while we're on this tour, which will take about 25 to 30 minutes, if you need to leave for a bathroom or anything, please don't just go on your own. Ask and I'll direct you out which door you can leave and you can take care of your needs. So you all ready? We're here in the Breezeway of the Peyton Randolph house. It's a very important house, portions of it that were built in 1717, and Peyton Randolph comes here as a young boy about 4 or 5 years of age. If you've never heard of him, he's thought of as the father of our country that folks don't talk about. He was a very good friend with George Washington and a cousin once removed with Thomas Jefferson. I'm sure you've heard those names before. We're in the Breezeway. The Breezeway is very impressive. It's a detail that shows wealth, and the Randolphs know all about wealth. They're supposedly the most prominent family here in the colony of Virginia. At least that was said about one person. It was a French traveler who said, when you hear the name Randolph, you shouldn't be surprised because the Randolphs were numerous and they were wealthy. Peyton Randolph was one of the speakers of the House of Burgesses, president of the First and Second Continental Congress, unanimously elected each and every time. A man highly regarded, and had he lived long enough, he might have been our very first elected president. He served here in the capital city of Williamsburg, and he lived in this property with his wife, Elizabeth Harrison Randolph. She too comes from a very prominent family. So I'll tell you a little bit about them, but I want you to know that here in this breezeway, this hallway that might not seem too impressive to you now, but in the 18th century, it was a very big deal. Plastered walls, glass in your windows, pine floors, and look at the extension and the length of this hall. This is a place that could have been used for work, maybe spinning fabric or fibers when the weather's bad outside. It's a place for folks to come and gather while they wait to meet with the Randolphs. And also when the Randolphs company comes to visit, invited guests, and they bring travel with them. If there wasn't a place outside in the outbuildings or in the loft area over the servants' hall, they could very well make a pallet here on the floor. And let's face it, 90% of Virginians were living on a floor, not as grand as this, but packed dirt, sometimes loose packed or tight packed, but this is pretty nice. We're going to walk to the servants' hall and start our tour there. I want you to understand that in this house, there are two worlds, one roof, and in this colony, one law. Follow me this way. We're going to walk past the kitchen and know that this kitchen is second only to the governor's palace kitchen. Folks who were invited to the governor's table would have their meals sometimes prepared by a fancy chef. Peyton Randolph has enslaved one woman, Betty, here, who might not have the title of a fine chef, but she certainly has the skills. And Peyton Randolph and his wife are not worried about the meals that Betty will prepare for their table. Through here, we'll go on into what we call the laundry. The laundry, it's a place where there can be dipping and molding of candles. It's a place for the enslaved to prep and pick and skin and gut and pluck and do prep work for things that are going to be finished off in the main kitchen. And you notice that in all these spaces, there is an oversized fireplace. And there are living spaces directly above here as well in the loft area. The enslaved that are on this property are living where they're working. In this house, there are two families, the Randolphs, Peyton and Elizabeth Randolph, and sometimes they have nieces and nephews who come to visit from time to time. The Randolphs were not blessed with their own children. However, there are children on this property, men and women who are enslaved. And on this property, there are 27 of the 109 enslaved that Peyton and Randolph owned. They live here as well. So two communities, two families. Again, two worlds, one roof, and one law. Right this way. Step into the servants' hall with me. Even though we're using the term servant here in the capital city, folks interchange servant and slave. But by the law, these people are their chattel property. They're enslaved. They have no rights or privileges, and they're here to serve the Randolphs. They are a major cog here in the capital city. In Williamsburg, 52.4% of the population are the enslaved. That's a large percentage of less than 2,000 people who are here. And the Randolphs have 27 of their 109 enslaved on this property, which makes him the largest private owner of human property here in the capital city. Here in this servants' hall, this is where some of the enslaved will gather at the end of the day. Some of them are working in the house directly. But just because you're enslaved on this property doesn't mean you're ever going in the house. There might not be a need for you to. Some were living in the outside buildings, and some will come in here in the servants' hall. So at the end of the day, imagine enslaved mothers and children and fathers and people who don't really have any family here, who are not connected by blood and DNA, but they had that heart connection. And so they gather as fictive kin, and they form family and community. So in this space is where your elders, maybe someone like Secordia, who was here on this, like Caesar and George and Ben or Bratches would be here. And here's where they find those few moments to feel human, to acknowledge each other. They live, love, laugh, die, cry. They fight together, and they grieve together, and they also uplift each other. And here's where those enslaved mothers and fathers would teach children how to have hope, how to dream dreams that might not manifest in their lifetime, but in their children's lifetime. So a lot of living goes on in this space. Sometimes they play a game such as Mancala, in a different place, how to feel less like someone's human property and more just like a person, which is what they were indeed, regardless of what the law said. This is what they call the servants' hall. We're going to go on with the rest of our tour. We'll go back into and through the laundry, multi-purpose space. We'll come through the kitchen. And as I said, this kitchen is only second to the Governor's Palace kitchen. Here you find the finest equipment. It's very spacious, oversized fireplace, and here we have what they call a clock jack and spit. So a chine of beef could be put in traps, will cause it to rotate the meat in front of the fire. You could have a trap pan underneath, and the grease and juices that flow from it would deposit there, and you could roast vegetables. A lot of cooking can be done in here. They do just about everything that you can imagine in this space. Over here you see the fine display of copper being fine for cooking and distributing heat. Mr. Randolph has the best of equipment for young boys, young girls who might be here washing utensils, spices, grounding up spices, doing whatever it takes to get that meal for the day. And not only is Betty going to provide the meal for the invited guests, 57 enslaved people on this property that she has to fix a meal for as well. So she's getting up before the sun comes up, working until the sun goes down. And she's also probably going to help the children maintain that kitchen garden that's close by, that's going to grow some of the exotic vegetables and herbs that Mrs. Randolph needs to complete her meals. All right, as we go through the servants' hall, the kitchen, and the back into the breezeway, we're leaving the outside world and going into the inside world. This breezeway connects the house to the servants' hall and those other spaces. Things change a little bit. This is the door. Ms. Randolph's not going to bring too many people here to impress them. She might travel through every now and then. But if you open the door this way, well, the paint makes a lot of difference. I hope you like blue. Come this way. We're walking to Mrs. Randolph's closet, but I call it her command central. She would come here early in the morning. Eve is her personal woman servant, valued at 100 pounds sterling to the advance. Eve is her second shadow, her right-hand woman, who goes everywhere she goes. So imagine Eve coming in here with Mrs. Randolph. But look at how well she's got herself set up. Here we have a door that will lead to the dining room and to a breezeway and a hall that takes you back out to the courtyard. This door will take us to a parlor where you can parlay and chit-chat. Over here, we have a door that leads to Mr. Randolph's office space, and before Peyton Randolph takes us as his office was used by his father, Sir John Randolph, the only Colonial Virginian to be knighted by the king for his contributions to the crown. Peyton Randolph, like his father, served as a barrister, able to practice law and approach the bar in all the British colonies. When we speak about this particular space, windows here that allow Mrs. Randolph to look out into the courtyard, see the outbuildings such as the gardener shack, the granary, the smokehouse, the dairy, the textile building. Those are the buildings that support this main house. She can run her whole house from this space, and that's why I call it her command central. Imagine her sitting at this desk in the morning before the sun comes up. Eve standing very close by in attendance. Here's where she'll write out her menus for the fine dinners that will be held here. A lot of politicking goes on at this house, so everything has to be just so-so. So imagine Eve staying at attention as she writes those menus. Mrs. Randolph can write out her notes of invitation, letters of thank you, and even from this space, write out her will and in it her expressed wishes. as to how she wants her property dispersed at the time of her demise. So imagine Eve being right here waiting for instructions. She'll take a list of chores back out to the women, to Secordia, to maybe Betty, and to the other folks that are there, what they're supposed to be doing for the rest of the day. And she stands there at attention until told to move. Right this way. You're coming into the parlor. Up here on the wall, that's your power couple, Peyton and Elizabeth Randolph, in their 30s. And they are a picture of wealth. Not just the wig that Mr. Randolph has on, the imported hair, not just the fabric around his neck, the fabric that makes his jacket and his waistcoat, the lace and ruffles around his arms and his wrist, and the buttons that go from the top to the bottom. Not just the silk that Mrs. Randolph has on with her hair pulled back, and she's got lace around her neckline, but the size of the portraits as well. Who probably has a portrait bigger than this? Maybe the governor, and definitely the king. So every little detail in this space points to their wealth and their status. In this town, they are a force to be reckoned with. But what gives them all of this is not just the labor from the Randolphs as they sit and they write and they think, but it is those enslaved folks that we're talking about. It's Bratches, it's Charlotte, it's Betty, it's Caesar, it's George, it's Eve. All of those people, the 27 enslaved in this household, they produce the labor that allows these people and those like them. 2% of this town are the gentry, and the Randolphs are a gentry family. They are allowed to live like this by the fact that their labor is working for them. Their money is working for them. The enslaved labor for their happiness. And this is what their labor produces. In this room, this is what we call a parlor, a place to parlay and to chit-chat. It's not a place or a space that's going to be used every day, but it's here if it needs to be. And so imagine people coming here, crossing the legs, chit-chatting. They have the time and the leisure to do that because, again, they have the enslaved working for them. You've got imported figurines here on the mantle, chimney mirrors encased in gold, heat shields to deflect the heat away from the fine ladies as they sit here taking tea. To cool themselves off, they could instruct the enslaved woman here in the corner, the servant, to please turn the heat shield and push the heat away from them to help lower their temperature so they can be comfortable. So you're sitting here with imported carpets on the floor, solid walls, hand-carved inlay, blue paint, fireplaces that run off of coal, all the fine accoutrements that point to wealth, all the details that point to their status. So this is just another space that the Randolphs have that help to make them feel comfortable and to make their guests feel like they're sitting in comfort and luxury. Come this way, let's take a look at Mr. Randolph's office space. When we step through here, you're looking at the east door and a portion of the house that was built in 1717. Peyton Randolph came to this town in 1724. This house was already here, built by William Robinson. This is an office space that Peyton Randolph's father, Sir John Randolph, used as a barrister. And maybe this is the door that his clients would come through, and eventually Peyton Randolph will be a barrister, following his father's footsteps, and his clients will use the same door. Peyton Randolph's father died when he was 16 years of age, and Peyton Randolph will inherit books, law books from his father that he will study. He will go to the College of William and Mary for a period of time, then go across the ocean to the Inns of Court, Middle Temple, and come back a barrister like his father as well. There'll be a time when Peyton Randolph will put those same books that he inherits from his father in his will, and he will leave them to his cousin, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson will eventually sell these books along with others that he has in his own collection, and they become the core of your Library of Congress today. They can still be seen. Would you like to go up upstairs? All right, we have 2 stairwells. I think everybody can travel up the staircase. Take your time coming up, one step at a time, and imagine what it would have been like during this time period in the 18th century to travel back and forth, up and down these steps, carrying something other than just you and your own weight. Take your time coming up, and as you get to the top, please take a look at the bedchamber. That bedchamber would have been used for the Randolph's nephews, Harrison Randolph and Randolph Harrison. These young boys attend the grammar school at the College of William and Mary, and when they're on holiday, they take residence in that room. That room connects to another bedchamber just on the other side of this hall that you'll see in just a minute. Here you have pallets in the hall. These 2 pallets would have been spread out at the end of the day for Caesar and George. Caesar and George are the young enslaved boys who are going to address their needs at the end of the day. They lay very close to the doorway, so when they call for them, they can address their needs. Right this way. Come on in and take a look at this next bedchamber. It connects to the same room that Harrison Randolph and Randolph Harrison would have been residing in. That's where you would have found Elizabeth Harrison, Mrs. Randolph's niece. She comes to this property a young girl of 12 and 13 years of age. Her parents have died in an accident, and she's now an orphan. So she comes here, and Peyton and Elizabeth Randolph are going to rear her. Mrs. Randolph's going to teach this young lady how to run a household, how to control your people. She's going to learn how to work with the enslaved. Mrs. Randolph is from Berkeley Plantation in Charles City County, Virginia. And she comes from a very powerful family. Her grandfather, Robert King Carter, is said at the time of his death to be the wealthiest man in the colony of Virginia. He owns over 300,000 acres of property, 44 plantations, and over 1,000 enslaved people. His property is so vast that it spans 12 counties. So this system of slavery, this institution, is not new to Mrs. Randolph. And she will pass all that she knows on to her niece, so she'll be able to exist within this institution and run a household as well. Here we have a parlor above stairs, another space that can be used. So if they need a guest bed chamber, they could use that bed there. You press that bed down when you need it, press it up when you don't. If you wanted a place for a classical reading or a music recital, this is what you would use. And here again we have what we call a pallet. This pallet can be stretched out so that Violet can be here at the end of the day. This is where she's going to rest. Violet comes here with Mrs. Randolph's niece, Elizabeth Harrison. Both of these girls are at the same place in their childhood, 12 or 13 years of age. Both of these girls need the same thing. One is going to continue on with their childhood, and one will have her childhood taken away. One is owning one, and one is taking care of the other. But both of these girls are the same age, and again, as I said, at the same place in their childhood. Imagine Peyton Randolph, the man that he is, founding father, prominent man in town, but an owner of human property. On this property, there are enslaved people, children, mothers, fathers, but it's not until the end of the day that they get to play that part, if at all, because during the day, their every move, all their energy is used to take care of the Randolphs and supply their needs. This is a town where revolution will eventually be in the hearts and minds of everyone. People here in this house, the women, the men, the children, will hear Mr. Randolph and the men that come to visit when they sit around and talk about the politics of the revolution. They'll hear these men compare themselves to being slaves for the king. They'll hear these men talk about not wanting to be under the thumb of the king, being oppressed and held back. They feel as though the king is choking them. He's got a noose around their neck and tightening them, and they want to be free to have their own liberty. Liberty, freedom. Those are things that are being not denied the enslaved, but they hear these people talking about it every day. In this house, there's a paradox. Freedom and slavery walking hand in hand. The same idea of freedom and liberties that Mr. Randolph is talking about, that equality for himself and his family, he's not extending that to the enslaved. Right here I have an inventory list, and this inventory has a list of all the things that are in this house. So when you're looking at the beds, the tables, this portmanteau, if you're looking at the bed furnishings, the candle holders, all the equipment we saw in the laundry, the kitchen, all these things are listed here. Peyton Randolph will eventually pass away in October of 1775. He is a man who will promote the idea of revolution and independence, but he does not live to sign the Declaration of Independence. How ironic. When he passes away, all those folks that are here on this property will be devastated. Not so much maybe out of love, but then maybe it could be. But they know this man. They know what they have with him. How's their life going to change? Because when the revolution comes, everybody's life is going to be different. And everybody's going to be involved and have choices to make. On the back of this inventory list, I have a list of the enslaved here. Johnny, his main man, valued at 100 pounds. Jack, 25 pounds. Billy, 100 pounds. Watt, 100 pounds. Eve, 100 pounds, thrown to the advance. Charlotte, 80. Then we have Peter, 15. What's it like to give all of your life and all of your energy to someone else who owns you? What's it like to have your rights stripped away from you and your humanity? And at the end of your life, after you've given your all, someone else gets to evaluate your worth. And now you're only worth 15 pounds. Something to think about. As Lord Dunmore will eventually call for folks to come and fight the revolution, the war, the battle against the crown, not so much against the crown, but for the crown, he'll be calling for the enslaved through a document called the Proclamation, Dunmore's Proclamation. He's calling for all able-bodied men, indentured servants, and slaves to come and fight for the cause of the British. And people here in this house are going to hear that. How do you think the enslaved are going to react to it? Are they going to participate? Are they going to run for their freedom? Are they going to trust Lord Dunmore, who has 57 slaves at the palace, that he's not offering freedom to? All sorts of things are going to happen at this time period, and folks are going to react differently. But the enslaved in this house, when they hear that Peyton Randolph has passed away, they're going to wonder what's going to happen to them. These people are property. And with this property, being enslaved, they can be given away as a wedding present, Christmas present, used to pay debts, taxes, gambled with. They can be put in Mr. Randolph's will as an inheritance, and they are going to be put in his will as inheritance. Will that will give them their freedom or not? These are some of the questions that folks are going to start to want to hear on this property as the revolution approaches. Come this way. We'll take a look at another portion of the house. In 1754, Peyton Randolph will inherit this house from his mother's will. And so he's going to make changes. When you come through here, you're going to see how the stairwell is much larger, much grander. Things will open up, there's lots of light. And take a look to the left, you'll see a window that you would see in all the government buildings here. The church, the college, you see it at the courthouse, the palace, and the Capitol on the east end of town. Peyton Randolph, the Randolphs are always a part of the government. They say some of the best and most accomplished lawyers came from the Randolph family. Take a look. The Randolphs know nothing about the bottom. They start up at the top. This window is the final adornment to Mrs. Randolph's house. But for the enslaved, they probably don't feel the same way. Because Mrs. Randolph can stand at that window, probably as she often did, never leave her house, and get a full view of her property, the outbuildings, and the workers outside. For the workers outside, if you happen to look up when she's looking at you, that's not good. That tells her that you're not working. So that could bring some devastating consequences. So what is the fine adornment to her is just a mere distraction to the others. Right this way, we'll see a lumber room, which is a storage space, a place to store more household goods. So you'll find housewares here, you'll find old trunks, and also those blue codes that represent sugar. Sugar is your 18th century crack. So imagine Mrs. Randolph's cook taking out a receipt or recipe, which requires more sugar than is in the kitchen. She'll send someone up upstairs or send for Mrs. Randolph to give her more sugar. Those things are kept behind lock and key because they're equal to money. And when we think about sugar, we think about the human cost. Young girls, some the same age as little Violet here in the house, worked in the sugar plantations. They also worked in the boiling room. The boiling room ran 24/7. They say the young girls worked so hard and were fed so poorly that their bodies never went to a state of menses, so they could not reproduce children or more enslaved people. They also found human remains where the muscle had detached itself from the bone because people had been worked so hard that they actually fell apart. You take a look here, you see the master chamber, or what we think is the master chamber. 2 beds in this space. We're not sure why, but Mrs. Randolph lives 8 years beyond her husband, and when she passes away, they do a room-by-room inventory. They find 2 beds here. Maybe, as a loving gesture, Mrs. Randolph might add an additional bed to this space to assure her husband's comfort. We know that in his declining years, he was portly in size, was asthmatic, and suffering with gout. And maybe he just needs his own space to be able to turn and be comfortable. On the floor, you see carpets at the end of the bed, and we know that from time to time, Eve might have been in here on a carpet to address Mrs. Randolph's needs, and also Johnny as well. Or they could have been out in this main hall. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to ask. We'll go below stairs and look at the dining room. Right this way. we also know the enslaved of the household wiped and dusted this off as well. And as you come down, you're facing a 9.5-foot black walnut panel door. This door opens to the town. We'll step into the dining room. In the morning, this could serve as an office space, but by 2 o'clock, this will be where dinner is served. So you can imagine coming to this table. Mrs. Randolph gets to sit here and show what fine tables she can set, what she can produce, what type of meals. So imagine your first course maybe being a salad or salmon gun that would be to the side table. And then maybe a soup. On the table, 4 or 5 meats. Maybe a hog's head in the middle, because these people do indeed eat high on the hog. And then your next course of vegetables. And then maybe you're going to have eventually a dessert table. And that's what we have set here now, with an orange on the top in that dish, surrounded by chocolate shaped like almonds. We've got pistachios and currants and raisins, English walnuts. We might have had candied orange peel, lemon peel, raisins and currants and cherries and dates, kumquats. Then to the back we have meat pies that could be very savory, or they could be fruit pies. We've got ginger cakes shaped like hearts. You've got linens on the table. Porcelain-handled knives and fine dinner plates. You have a napkin that can be placed around your neck. If you can't tie it, someone here in this room will tie it around your neck for you. Carpets on the floor. Italian imported marble in the surround. Every detail points to the wealth of these people. So imagine when Mrs. Randolph's not here serving and showing her skills as a fine hostess. We'll put her husband here, Peyton Randolph. And we'll bring in the men from the government. A lot of politicking goes on here, but that doesn't mean the enslaved go away. Peyton Randolph is sitting here, behind him, his right-hand man, Johnny. We'll put Thomas Jefferson, his cousin, here, and behind him, his man, Jupiter. Maybe we'll put Patrick Henry over here when they could get along, and his man, Ralph. And then we'll put, let's see, who have we left out? No one? We've got Peyton Randolph, Thomas Jefferson, all these men here, Patrick Henry, and the right-hand men around them in their inner circle. But on the fringes of the room stand the enslaved of this household. And if it's not the women, then the men. They're standing here seeing but not being seen, hearing but not being heard, and taking it all in. They hear the conversation of these brilliant men, and these men are indeed brilliant. They're educated, they're independent thinkers. They've embraced the philosophies of people like Voltaire and Hume and Hobbes and Rousseau and Montesquieu and Locke. They applaud and embrace their ideas and thoughts. And these men have a lot to say, and they express their thoughts very loudly. These men, when they're being weighed on hand and foot, there's nothing that they can want for. This is the Randolph household. So imagine sitting here and getting into their cups, and when they do, the volume of their voices rise toward the heavens. It sounds more like a fight than a debate and discussion, and they talk about everything. These men actually say they won't be shackled like the African, but these men have never worn shackles. They say they won't be slaves to England, and these men have never been slaves. Can you imagine the shock on the faces of the people who stand on the fringes of the room? What do they know about being a slave? How can they even shape their mouths to use that word when most of these men indeed do own other people, human property? When over half this town, 52.4% are the enslaved. But these men continue to meet and talk, and they're talking about independence. They're talking about how all men, not some of them, but all men, to include women, even if they don't say it, are created equal. And they have a right to those inherent rights that are God-given, that no man or woman can give you or take away from you. When it's all been said, people staying in this room will eventually put pen to paper, not all, but some, and they will write the General Assembly, and they will use these men's words to create their own argument for independence. Just know that these men are the beginning of something great, but it continues on. The enslaved are listening, they're watching, and they're learning, and they will seek to fight for their independence as these men do as well. On this wall here, we have William and Mary Isham Randolph. They are Peyton Randolph's grandparents, Thomas Jefferson's great-grandparents. They're known as the Adam and Eve of Virginia's first families. But just know today